Good morning. I'm Lee Massey with Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I'm the special agent in charge of the Orlando Regional Operations Center. And I want to thank each of you for coming out today for this press conference. We're pleased to announce the arrest of Brian and Crystal Washborn, owners of Amore Pools Incorporated, for defrauding hundreds of Treasure Coast homeowners, as well as homeowners in other counties outside the Treasure Coast area, out of more than $2 million of their hard-earned money. First, I'd like to introduce the individuals on stage with me, if I could. Sheriff Mascaro from St. Lucie County, Sheriff Flowers from Indian River County, Chief Del Toro, Port St. Lucie Police Department. Also from the office of Jimmy Petronas, our Chief Financial Officer, Chris Welch, who is the Workmen's Compensation Fund Chief, and his team. I have Mike Bardis, FDLE Regional Agent in Charge, Resident Agent in Charge. I have from the Department of Corrections, the Office of Probation and Services, Certified Probation Officer, or Corrections Probation Officer, John Barnum, who was the primary probation officer involved in the investigation with the FDLE agents. I also have the Assistant Regional Director, John Thompson. Right here. John is up here as well. Huge partnership. Did I miss anybody? I have one, probably definitely the most important person to introduce you to, who will speak at the end of this, and that is the individual who is representing the victims in this case, Diana Fell. Diana is right here behind me. She will speak as well, and she is representing these victims who lost all of this money. Want to thank you all for coming, but really I want to thank the individuals you see behind me, their organizations. This was a very challenging case, covered a lot of geographical area, a lot of complicated issues to address, and this is only successful because of the partnerships that were forged during this investigation. And it's for me, having been a longtime law enforcement officer, it's just nice to see the professionalism, the collaboration, the ability to bring closure to this case, because ultimately we are all here to serve the citizens, and this is the result of that. So here's what I can tell you. Our agents in July were in receipt of a complaint about a company taking deposits for the contracts to build swimming pools, residential swimming pools. Once our agents received this complaint, what they saw at the initial onset was shocking. This was not a business who was struggling to fulfill or to meet a strong consumer demand during a pandemic. This was the actions of Brian and Crystal Washborn that were calculated and intentional. They systematically set out with a plan to defraud homeowners along the Treasure Coast and other counties. They never had a desire to build a small business, and their only goal was fraud. The Amore Pools Incorporated was that vehicle that they used to steal millions from more than 100 homeowners. Their scheme started even before Amore Pools was actually built or established, and let me explain. The Washburns don't have the experience or the expertise to become licensed pool and spa contractors. As a matter of fact, Brian Washborn doesn't even have the legal ability because of a prior conviction for similar type of crimes. But in 2017, they put together numerous fraudulent documents, all forged and at least one signature, with at least one signature, to create the ability to get credentialing in an application packet that allowed Crystal to become the applicant. And with this packet, filled with total lies, they were able to become a registered pool and spa contractor. Once they became a licensed contractor, the Washburns started selling Amore pools to homeowners, victims who thought they were dealing with a reputable and experienced company. These victims from Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucie, Okeechobee, Palm Beach, and Martin counties all signed contracts with Amore Pools for in-ground backyard swimming pools. Upon signing the contracts, they were required to pay up to a 25% deposit. That equated to tens of thousands of dollars for each individual. After paying the deposit, some of the victims never heard from Brian and Crystal Washborn again, but others were victimized yet a second time. For some homeowners, Amore Pools dug large holes in backyards, sometimes making the foundations of the residents unstable, sometimes digging outside the property lines. Often, they left dangerous debris around these holes, making backyards both unusable and unsafe, before abandoning the homeowners altogether. But incredibly, the fraud didn't end there either. After receiving payments from the victims, the Washburns used a third-party check cashing store to convert these illegal funds from checks to cash. We believe, through the investigation, this was an attempt to conceal these illicit funds. So after defrauding countless homeowners and a 2.5-month investigation, I'm pleased to announce that FDLE, along with the partners you see here, arrested Brian and Crystal Washburn yesterday afternoon at their home. It started in the morning, it ended up in the afternoon. Cases like this one, involving a large number of victims and large dollar amounts, covering a large geographical area, are oftentimes resource consuming. And I know our agents in the Fort Pierce field office, along with these partners, spent countless nights and weekends putting the case together as quickly as possible. And they did that because they all knew that failure to take these two individuals off the streets would result in more victims. I can't applaud them enough for the work that was done. I can't applaud our partners enough for what they committed to this investigation as well. And with that being said, I would like to turn the podium over to Sheriff Mascara to make the comments about this case in addition. Sheriff?
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Well, no, it's okay. Agent Massey mentioned it, but it cannot be underscored enough. This investigation was very complex. All these partners played a crucial role in bringing justice for the victims that have been swindled out of money. And it might not be done in all regions like this, but here on the Treasure Coast, there's no I in team. When we're serving our citizens, we love to collaborate with other law enforcement agencies to bring justice to victims. You know, I heard about Amore Pools about 14 months ago. A call came to me directly asking if I had any knowledge about the company. And I actually drove out to their office on Kings Highway, and underneath their sign, their motto is "Built with Love." Well, over time, I realized this was built on a sham, and that's what this company was. As Agent Massey mentioned, this was a sham company that had one goal in mind, and that was scamming victims, not only in St. Lucie County, but the Treasure Coast. And for the 150 victims that we know that are out here on the Treasure Coast, know that the Washburns are on deep end right now. It's not deep end of one of their pools, but it's the deep end of jail, and that's where we want to keep them. You know, over time, as mentioned, this shoddy workmanship that we were told was being done by the company turned into downright fraud, as mentioned. And my goal, our goal collectively, I hope, is that we recoup some of the monies for these victims who lost their hard money with just the intent of one thing, is that to put a pool in their backyard. So we're all here working together for the citizens of the Treasure Coast who lost money in this scam, and we will continue to work for them to recoup the money that they lost. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Eric Flowers from Indian River County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Sheriff. I just want to say on behalf of the citizens of Indian River County, we want to thank our partners at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. This case came to us. We started receiving complaints quite a few complaints actually, and Florida Department of Law Enforcement approached us through their partnerships with the State Attorney General's office and the statewide prosecutor. They were able to take this statewide, and we certainly appreciate that. We know that we couldn't do it without Ashley Moody, Attorney General Ashley Moody's team on this, and we just want to thank them for stepping in and assisting the victims in Indian River County. We're going to continue to work with them to find justice in this case. Thank you.
And to the sheriff's point, I did fail to mention the Attorney General's office, Attorney General Ashley Moody. This case will be prosecuted by the Office of Statewide Prosecution, which falls under the Attorney General, and that is an incredible value and incredible asset to this investigation because of the multiple circuits. I'd like to introduce now, you've seen the sheriffs and myself stand up here and speak, but the men and women that were actually on the ground doing the job really deserve all the credit for this. And I'd like to introduce Resident Agent in Charge Mike Bardis of the Fort Pierce Field Office to share a few words about the investigation. Mike?
Thank you, Zach Massey. Thank you, sheriffs, for being here today, and Sheriff Mascara for hosting this event. As a supervisor here in Fort Pierce Field Office, I just want to thank our investigators for their diligence on this case, which has been a priority in our field office for the past few months. FDLE felt a sense of urgency because Crystal and Brian Washborn were brazen in their fraud. While the victims were numerous locally, the Washburns were soliciting business and branching out to other communities like Orange County, Palm Beach County, and Seminole counties. So it cannot be prouder of our FDLE agents and our law enforcement partners that are here today for stopping this couple from victimizing homeowners in our community. I want to commend all the agencies here today that brought these fraudsters to justice. Thank you. At this point in the investigation, we believe our agents have identified and spoken with many of Amori Pool victims. But if anyone has information about or had business with Brian or Crystal Washburn, please contact us here at the Fort Pierce Field Office. Our number is 772-216-0301. Again, the number is 772-216-0301. With that being said, now I would like to welcome Diana Fell to the podium. As we've mentioned, there are more than 100 victims in this case. Ms. Fell is unfortunately one of those victims, and she would like to tell her story. Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of my family and the over 100 victims throughout the state of Florida, we would not be here today without these people standing before you. The support of the local and county agencies has been overwhelming. We are so grateful to the following agencies for their relentless pursuit of justice in this case: the FDLE, the Attorney General's Office, prosecutors, the Department of Financial Services, Division of Investigation and Forensic Services, the Sheriff's Department of Martin County, St. Lucie County, and Indian River County. A special thank you to the special agents from the FDLE, Bill Saladidris, and his partner Derek Breesky. They all worked tirelessly to build this case. We are a group of hardworking families residing in the state of Florida. These victims are single parents, first responders, veterans, active military, retirees, and small business owners such as myself. These families I represent today deserve justice, and I, for one, couldn't be happier to see it served. Thank you.
It's always rewarding for law enforcement in general to be able to give closure to the victims, some form of closure, hopefully followed by some type of restitution for their losses. But to have the ability to have one of the victims come forward and speak on behalf of the efforts of these law enforcement professionals that you see standing here that are represented is sort of why we do the job, and it gives all of us some type of internal peace, I guess you would say, to know that we were able to take these two individuals. I don't want to say anything, Sheriff, in your county that's inappropriate, so we'll call them individuals off the streets. But With that being said, I do want to let you all know that this case is still active, that there are other parts to this investigation that we have yet to complete, and we're continuing to identify things that we need to investigate as the case goes on. So we may be limited in some of the information we can share with you or the questions you ask, but I'd like to open it up if there are any questions, and if I can't answer them, I'll definitely turn to the experts. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, as far as how Tuesday went, as far as taking both Brian and Crystal into custody, how FDLE went about that?
Sure. So, Resident Agent in Charge, Bardis, along with his team and the members you see up here, coordinated an operation plan. It involved search warrants to be served at residences, at industrial locations, and vehicles. So I won't go into the tactics. Obviously, we won't share the tactics, but it was an effort that focuses on officer safety, the legality of the Fourth Amendment issues, and the search warrants were served. Evidence was collected. The individuals were arrested, and we moved forward from there. So there was nothing dynamic that took place at the search warrants. There was no confrontations. It was for lack of better terms, it was a peaceful encounter, and both individuals surrendered to the authorities, and they were booked into the jail.
Were they surprised?
I don't know if anybody's never not surprised when they're put in handcuffs, but you know, they've been doing this for a while, and bad guys have a tendency to look over their shoulder quite often, so I'm sure that they were constantly looking. Unfortunately, this time they found somebody in the rearview mirror.
Thinking of restitution, what kinds of things did you also seize from their home or from their businesses, and is there anything that you seized that could potentially be used to sell for restitution?
So we're still in the process. You know, you always have to check for accounts, and you have to check for any type of stashes of money in certain locations. There was some heavy equipment that was seized. Thank you to the sheriff for allowing us to house it at his facility. That's always something that may be able to be sold off and procure some type of dollars for restitution. You know, the whole restitution piece comes at the end of the investigation and the prosecution. So we will continue to do our due diligence to try and find as much as we can as far as assets go that we can ultimately, hopefully, give back to these victims, and that's where our focus will go.
Is it actually illegal for a business owner to accept checks and cash them and not put them into a business account, or is that just considered bad practice?
So I won't go into a lot of specifics, but there are other mitigating factors that go along with that practice in this particular case. That's one of those things that we won't divulge any additional information on at this time. To say it is illegal to cash a check and take cash, in and of itself, the answer would be no. But there are a lot of things that individuals are responsible for doing if they have that type of a practice that we're taking a look at.
I know it's an ongoing investigation, but can there be other persons involved with an operation as big as this one for as many months that it took place and over 100 clients being defrauded?
I think it would be irresponsible for us not to take that into consideration, and that'll be part of the efforts moving forward. With all of these partners up here, there are a lot of resources available to the FDLE field office to rely on, and I can promise you that both these sheriffs, the chief, and all of the members of the various entities are all on board with making sure we dig as deep as we need to dig to find any potential participants. And I don't want to speak for either any of the law enforcement heads, but I think I feel pretty good about making that statement. Sheriff?
Sure.
So there are some records that show that they did finish some pools, I think maybe about 20 over the last 2 years. There are at least closed permits and passed some final inspections. So did you find any trend as to like which pools they would actually commit to finishing and which ones they would abandon?
I don't want to speak in detail to it. I'm aware of one pool that we believe was completed that came with a lot of problems, and there's probably litigation tied into that issue as well. I don't know how much of a record we have on other completed pools.
Let us not forget that, you know, originally the contractor's license on its face was obtained by fraud. So if a victim had a pool that was in its completed stages, they're most likely going to have it reviewed and inspected again to make sure that there wasn't any additional faults. But I have not heard of any completed pool or satisfied homeowner that had one that was done to their expectations.
How would he go about it? Would they go to a home, or do the homeowner go to the business? Can you walk me through how he would obtain, the deposit?
To answer your question, Morey Pools, they had a pretty good platform in social media. They advertised on the web. They had a lot of banners, and I think by word of mouth, that's how they were able to identify, customers, as well as being on Facebook, for example. And so people would talk, and so I think the investigation revealed that what they would tend to do is hook victims, because they could have a timeline, 8 to 10 weeks, 12 weeks to complete a pool. They would be 20 to 30 or 40% sometimes lower in cost, as well as promising them that they have the ability to get travertine, for example, at a really low cost, and that they did everything in-house. So these are some of the things that these hardworking taxpayers were hooked in to and fell victim.
Remember, the little follow with that, remember my comments early on in the introduction referenced the fact that this was not a company that was struggling to meet the needs during a pandemic. During a pandemic, we saw a challenge with certain companies being able to complete their products or their work because of restrictions or inability to get materials or so on and so forth. So the thing that Rack Bartis spoke to about they would come in and sell this message that they did have the ability to get those materials and complete them in this time. They took advantage of a pandemic. As a matter of fact, one of the charges has to do with a state of an emergency kind of declaration during the times that they were facilitating this fraud. So they played on the innocence of the victims. They, to the sheriff's point when he referenced the sign, a pool built with love. It's sort of like being a thief on steroids, if you will. So they stole the money of innocent people, but they also played on their emotions, and they took advantage of a time when we were all, as we still are, struggling with a pandemic. So it just amplifies, in my opinion, the lack of moral capabilities with these individuals.
How many charges are they facing?
16?
16.
I believe there's 16 felony counts for both of them. They each are facing the same charge.
Did it seem like one of them was more of the, I hate to use the term masterminds, but sort of the person who came up with all of this and sort of looped the other person in? Or did this seem to be like a mutual, we came up with this scheme together, we're equally
Would you like to speak to how the husband led the charge?
I can't speculate to who was really in charge, other than the fact that one was a convicted felon that couldn't be licensed in the state of Florida to be a contractor. And his spouse, Crystal Washborn, who obtained the contractor's license by fraud, I can only speculate that, that they conspired together to commit this fraud.
And what did she lie about in what was her application to build pools?
In the credentialing packet, her experience, the fact that she lived in the state of Florida for a certain amount of time, which we were able to definitively prove that she wasn't even here for a lot of time that she speculated that she was here. And the contractors that she worked for in a supervisor role and constructing pools, she's never had any of that experience before.
So how was she able to get away with that, with those lies?
Well, I can't answer to that. I mean, we were just able to definitively prove by interviews and our investigation that those facts that were on the credentialing packet were false on its face.
And I know like a lot of these victims approached either law enforcement or county boards, and there's a bunch of complaints, and I know on the surface they're all kind of viewed originally, I believe, as civil complaints. How many complaints does it take of this nature to escalate it to someone saying, okay, there might be something criminal going on here?
I don't think there's a really amount to say that has to go from a civil investigation to a criminal investigation. But us working together as a team, all of the agencies here today, we're able to definitively prove that they formed their company essentially by fraud. So when we started investigating the credentialing packet and their experience and the contractor who purportedly signed off on her experience and that those were all false and forged documents, I think that on itself was the predicate offense, and then everything after that was fruit of the poisonous tree.
What's, I guess, words of advice to the public who will see this and have a hard time maybe trusting certain contractors? What's the best word of
Just do
advice?
your due diligence to the best of your ability. I don't know if any of the agency heads would like to speak to it for your constituents, but from our perspective at FDLE, it's just a matter of doing your due diligence. You know, citizens work hard for their money, and when you're talking about these kind of dollars, it's critical that they know exactly who they're dealing with. And unfortunately, we have this within our society, and you know, that's a challenge. To go back to Rack Bardis's point a little bit on the civil versus criminal, I think the fact that we were able to collectively and collaboratively work together provide us the ability to go from what appeared to be initially a civil issue to a criminal. We need the intent, right? Law enforcement has standards we have to meet in order to take it to a criminal investigation. So every agency, when they receive these complaints, you heard the sheriff himself say he drove out to the location. It was his focus, as it was every agency, had to do what they could do to ensure their citizens, their constituents, were provided the service that they expect and demand from their law enforcement agencies. And when you have the sheriff get up and drive himself, that was his focus. And together we were able to bring a team of folks from various entities within the law enforcement community to clear that hurdle and take that from a civil to a criminal. And that's just part of the great work that the men and women who are, unfortunately, other than Agent Saldrigas, most of them are out still working, right? So we're standing here in suits and ties talking to the cameras, and they're out still in the trenches doing their job. So we'll continue to do that. Sheriffs?
I'll close with one thing. Megan, you asked about, you know, what about future contractors doing business, you know, here on the Treasure Coast. If you plan on doing business with a contractor, go ahead and reach out to the Better Business Bureau, reach out to Treasure Coast Builders Association, reach out to one of these agencies and say, hey, have you any dealings with ABC Construction? What have you heard? Do you have any reports? I think vetting your contractor and who you're going to do business with before you turn over your hard-earned money would be a good investment for everyone.
People might say, and someone can clarify this, you know, if they get out of jail, can they open a business in a new name and start doing this again, or get a family member to open a business in a new name and just carry on their scheme again? What safeguards are in place to prevent that, or are there safeguards in place?
Well, remember, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? So I think, to the sheriff's point, if they were to get out and try and do something under another name, I think that's where that vetting process starts. And you know, somewhere along the way, if you do your due diligence, you're going to discover that the Washburns were involved in something that should be a flag. At some point, you know, it is our desire, and with the Office of Statewide Attorney on board, I think we'll be successful because of the great work that was done. We'll get the prosecution and the conviction, and once we get the conviction on Cynthia to go along with her husband, now we have 2 convicted felons, and neither of them will be able to get the license that they need to do this type of work. So it's a process. We have a system. We're one piece of the entire network of criminal justice, so we'll keep working hard at it.